You are a logical person. You believe in evidence, in data, in cause and effect. You have been told that to manifest your desires, you must feel them into existence. You must generate emotions of joy and gratitude, emotions that, to your rational mind, feel completely fraudulent. You have tried, and you have failed, and you have concluded that this entire world of manifestation is a delusion for the emotionally undisciplined. But what if there is another path? A path that does not require you to feel anything. A path that is as rigorous, as logical, and as powerful as a mathematical proof. This story is that path. It will provide a clear, step-by-step method for manifestation that is designed for the skeptical, analytical mind. It is a technique that bypasses the messy world of emotion and operates in the clean, powerful world of structured thought. By the end, you will not need to believe in magic. You will simply have a new, and far more powerful, understanding of logic. Dr. Alistair Finch was a man who trusted only what he could measure. At 42, he was a brilliant but beleaguered neuroscientist, a man whose entire life was dedicated to mapping the objective reality of the human brain. His laboratory at the University of Edinburgh was his sanctuary, a world of clean data, controlled variables, and the relentless pursuit of empirical truth. His personal life was a reflection of his work, ordered, minimalist, and devoid of any messy, unpredictable emotional variables. His most sacred and all-consuming desire was to make a discovery that would change the world. He was on a quest for the holy grail of his field, the neural signature of consciousness, a specific, measurable brainwave pattern that would finally prove that consciousness was not a metaphysical ghost, but a quantifiable, physical phenomenon. He believed he was on the verge of this discovery, but for 2 years he had been stuck, staring at a mountain of data that was pure, chaotic noise. His antagonist was his own brilliant, but limited, mindset of scientific materialism. This was the core of his identity, the belief that if something could not be measured by his instruments, it simply did not exist. This mindset made him a brilliant scientist, but a terrible creator. He approached his desire for a breakthrough with a logic that was, in itself, a trap. He believed that if he just worked harder, analyzed more data, and applied more processing power, the answer would inevitably reveal itself. He was trying to force a discovery from a reality that, by all available data, did not yet contain it. He had heard of manifestation, but he dismissed it as emotional wish fulfillment, a pseudoscience for people who couldn't handle the cold, hard facts of reality. The first crack in his materialist worldview appeared not as a feeling, but as a piece of data he could not explain. It was a sound, a faint, complex harmonic frequency that would appear in his mind during his rare moments of deep, exhausted sleep. It was not a dream. It was a structured, repeating, and impossibly elegant signal. He tried to record it, to find its source, but his own sophisticated instruments detected nothing. The signal existed only in his consciousness. It was a piece of irrefutable, subjective data, and it was slowly, methodically, driving him mad. Is he on the verge of a mental breakdown, his own mind creating a phantom signal? Or is this the first, purely logical clue that there is a layer of reality his instruments cannot detect, a reality that operates on a different, and far more powerful, set of rules? If you are a logical, skeptical person who is intrigued by the possibility of manifestation but repulsed by the demand to feel it, then subscribe. This story is your logical, step-by-step user manual. Part 1. The phantom signal was becoming a persistent, maddening variable in Alistair's perfectly controlled experiment of a life. The previous loop closed, the unexplained data point had challenged his entire worldview. The new loop opened with a crushing, real-world pressure. His university funding was under review. The board, seeing no progress on his consciousness project for 2 years, had given him a 3-month ultimatum. Deliver a significant breakthrough, or the lab would be repurposed, and his life's work would be over. In a state of quiet desperation, he began to look outside his own field. He was digging through the archives of his predecessor, a brilliant but eccentric professor who had been forced into early retirement for his unorthodox interests. In a dusty box of old papers, Alistair found a series of letters between the professor and a Dr. Evelyn Reed, a theoretical physicist who had been a rising star in the 1980s before abruptly disappearing from the academic world. The letters spoke of the observer's role in collapsing wave functions, but they applied the principle not to subatomic particles, but to reality itself. The final letter contained a hand-drawn map to a remote location in the Scottish Highlands, with a single cryptic note, where the math and the music meet. Driven by an intellectual curiosity that was stronger than his skepticism, Alistair followed the map. It led him to a remote, windswept house overlooking a deep, dark loch. The house was not a mystical cottage. It was a modern glass and steel structure, filled not with crystals, but with books, thousands of them, on physics, mathematics and philosophy. In the center of the main room, next to a grand piano, was a massive blackboard covered in elegant, complex equations. Standing before it was a woman in her late 70s, with sharp, intelligent, and deeply amused eyes. This was Dr. Evelyn Reed. Alistair, accustomed to being the authority, found himself in the rare and uncomfortable position of being the student. He tried to explain his research, his data, his phantom signal, his logical approach to his problem. Evelyn listened, her gaze sharp and analytical. "You are a very fine scientist, Dr. Finch," she said, her voice a precise and elegant instrument. "You have built a perfect, logical boat. And you are trying to sail it across the ocean by taking a very detailed inventory of the boat's contents. It is a noble and thorough approach, but it will never get you to the other shore." She then walked him over to her blackboard. "You are trying to find the one, singular, pre-existing answer in your data," she explained. "But quantum reality does not work that way. There is no one answer. There is an infinite field of potential answers, all existing simultaneously as waves of probability. The answer does not exist until you, the conscious observer, choose it. The act of choosing it is what collapses the wave and makes it a fact. You are not a detective, searching for a clue. You are a creator, making a choice." She then gave him a task that was, to his logical mind, completely absurd. She led him to a pile of rough, unhewn stones in her garden. "For a scientist," she said, "there is no greater lesson than humility. Your task is to build a simple, stable cairn, a stack of 5 stones. But there is one rule. You are forbidden from measuring, from analyzing, from pre-planning. You must simply pick up a stone, and your hand will know where it goes. You must learn to trust a different kind of data." He has found a mentor who speaks the language of science, but with a mystical grammar. He has been asked to abandon his greatest tool, his analytical mind, and trust a non-verbal, intuitive, knowing. Can a man who believes only in what he can measure possibly succeed at a task that forbids measurement? Part 2. Alistair approached the pile of stones as if it were a hostile dataset. This closed the previous loop. He had his mentor and his impossible task. The new loop of conflict began instantly. He picked up a large, flat stone for the base. Then he picked up another. His mind immediately went to work, a silent, frantic calculation of mass, center of gravity, and friction coefficients. He would place a stone, step back, analyze the angle, pick it up again, and try a different one. For an hour, he was a parody of his own scientific method, trying to engineer a simple, organic structure. The cairn collapsed 3 times. His internal conflict was a raging debate. His antagonist, the scientific materialist mindset, was in its element. "This is a farce," it argued, its voice crisp and logical. "The stability of a structure is a matter of physics, not feeling. You are being played by a senile old woman. You are a scientist, not a stonemason. You should be back in your lab, running algorithms, doing real work." The frustration was immense. He was a man who could map the firing of 1,000,000 neurons, but he could not stack 5 simple stones. The external conflict was a formal, written warning from his university dean, a man named Dr. Wallace, who was a lifelong rival. "Alistair," the email read, "I am officially giving you a 2-month deadline. By that time, I require a formal presentation of a significant breakthrough to the funding committee. If you cannot provide it, your lab's resources will be reallocated. This is not a negotiation. The email was a cold, hard, and very real timeline, a direct contradiction to the timeless, patient work Evelyn was asking of him. He brought his failure and his frustration to Evelyn. He told her about the collapsed cairn, about the dean's ultimatum. "I am a scientist," he said, the words a plea. "I need a method. I need a protocol. I cannot operate on feeling." Evelyn looked at him, her expression one of deep, analytical compassion. "Excellent," she said. "You have finally stated the problem correctly. You do not need to feel anything. Feeling is just another form of data, and for you, it is noisy and unreliable. We will not use it. We will use a tool you already possess in abundance: pure, disciplined, structured logic." She then gave him the first step of the logical path. "We will not call it manifestation," she said. "We will call it axiomatic creation. Your task is no longer to feel the answer. It is to begin with the answer as an unshakable axiom, and to reason backwards from it. Go home. And for 1 hour, you will sit in silence. And you will hold in your mind, as a simple, non-emotional, logical fact, this one sentence: the neural signature of consciousness is discovered. The pattern is found. You will not try to feel it. You will simply hold it as a given, as the A in A equals A. That is your new experiment." He has been given a lifeline, a method that promises to bypass the messy world of emotion entirely. He is being asked to perform a purely mental act of assuming a conclusion. But can his mind, so rigorously trained to search for evidence, possibly accept an axiom for which there is, as of yet, no proof at all? Part 3. Alistair's life became a strange, secret experiment in the power of a single thought. The 2-month deadline from Dean Wallace was a constant, real-world pressure, the ticking clock against which his unorthodox work was being measured. The loop of his initial failure was closed, but a new, more subtle loop of practice and doubt opened. The practice of axiomatic creation was the hardest intellectual work he had ever done. He would sit in the prescribed silence, and he would try to hold the axiom: the pattern is found. But his scientific materialist mind, his brilliant and loyal servant, would immediately rebel. It would flood his consciousness with a torrent of counter-arguments, of evidence to the contrary, of all the reasons why the axiom was a lie. This was not a battle of feelings, it was a battle of pure logic. The sub-trauma of his professional rivalry with Dean Wallace intensified. Wallace, sensing weakness, began to poach Alistair's best graduate students, offering them positions on his own, better-funded projects. It was a subtle act of war, designed to isolate Alistair and dismantle his lab even before the deadline. This external pressure was a perfect mirror of Alistair's own internal doubts about his worth and the validity of his work. Another sub-trauma was his relationship with his younger brother, a struggling musician. His brother represented the world of pure, unstructured creativity, a world Alistair had always secretly envied and openly disdained. During their weekly calls, his brother would talk about flow and channeling, concepts that Alistair was now, to his own horror, beginning to investigate from a different angle. These conversations were a source of deep, internal dissonance. He kept returning to Evelyn's Highland retreat, bringing her the data from his failed sessions. "I can't hold the axiom," he confessed. "My own logic refutes it at every turn. It is an unproven assumption. My mind is designed to reject it." Evelyn was calibrating an old, beautiful orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system. "You are still trying to believe the axiom is true," she said, her focus on a tiny brass gear. "That is not the instruction. You do not have to believe it. You simply have to accept it as the foundational premise of a closed, logical system for the duration of the experiment. Do you believe that x is equal to 5 in an algebraic equation? No. You accept it as a given in order to solve for y. This is the same. Your y is the path to the discovery. Your x is the discovery itself. Stop trying to believe. Start calculating." He has been given a profound correction. The method is not about belief or feeling, but about a cold, calculated, and temporary acceptance of a premise. It is a form of mental modeling. This is a language he understands. But can he truly silence his own inner fact-checker long enough to run the calculation? Part 4, the new instruction, stop trying to believe, start calculating, was the key that unlocked the method. The loop of his frustrating practice was closed. The final powerful loop of the real method was about to begin. Alistair returned to his lab and approached his practice not as a mystic, but as a mathematician. He would sit, and he would set the axiom, the pattern is found. He would then ask the one purely logical question that flowed from this premise. If the pattern is already found, what must have been true about my methodology for me to have found it? He was reasoning backwards. He was reverse engineering a future discovery. He was not asking the universe for an answer. He was asking his own superconscious mind to show him the logical steps he must have taken on the timeline where the discovery was already a fact. He sat with this question for an entire weekend. His mind, now given a logical problem to solve instead of an emotional state to generate, went to work. And in a silent, stunning flash of pure, cold, and beautiful logic, the answer came. It was not a feeling. It was a chain of deductions. If the pattern is found, his mind reasoned, it must exist. If it exists but I haven't seen it, my current analytical tools must be insufficient. If they are insufficient, they must be filtering out the very data they are designed to find. What am I filtering out? The answer was immediate. The noise, the junk data, the seemingly random fluctuations he had always programmed his computers to ignore. But what if the pattern is not in the signal? What if the pattern is the noise? And then, the second, more profound deduction. If the pattern is the noise, it is not a linear, cause and effect pattern. It must be a pattern of relationship, of resonance, of interference. It is not a melody. It is a chord. And then, the final, earth-shattering click. The phantom frequency he had been hearing in his dreams. It wasn't a hallucination. It was the sound of the chord. It was his own consciousness, unfiltered by his analytical mind, directly perceiving the pattern itself. A quote from the physicist Niels Bohr, which Evelyn had written on her blackboard, became a blindingly obvious truth. Everything we call real is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. The real data was the noise. He did not feel a wave of ecstatic joy. He felt a profound and deeply satisfying sense of correctness. It was the feeling a mathematician gets when a complex proof resolves into an elegant, simple, and undeniable truth. He had the path. He has it. The logical path to his discovery. He has used a metaphysical technique to arrive at a purely scientific solution. But this is still a theory, a beautiful deduction. He still has to prove it. Can he design an experiment that will prove his radical new hypothesis before his time runs out? This logical, step-by-step method has sparked a new insight for you? Subscribe for more stories that provide a practical, evidence-based approach to creating your reality. Part 5. The moment of logical epiphany was the true beginning of Alistair's manifestation. The previous loop closed. He had the theory. Now, the consequences of that theory began to unfold. He walked into his lab on Monday morning, a man transformed. The frantic, desperate energy was gone, replaced by a calm, focused, and almost joyful sense of purpose. His first action was to completely rewrite the core algorithm of his data analysis software. He instructed it to do the opposite of what it was designed to do. Instead of filtering out the noise and searching for linear signals, he programmed it to search for recurring, harmonic resonance patterns within the noise. He was essentially teaching his computer to look for the ghost frequency. The consequences were immediate. His two remaining graduate students, who had been on the verge of abandoning him, saw the new code and were electrified. Professor, his brightest student, a young woman named Isla, said, her eyes wide with excitement. This is insane. This is a completely new way of looking at the data. If this works, it changes everything. His new, calm certainty had become a magnetic force, reigniting the passion and loyalty of his team. He was no longer reacting to his circumstances. He was creating them. He would use his axiomatic creation protocol every morning. He would set the axiom, the proof is clear and irrefutable, and then he would ask, what is the next logical step? The answers would come with a clean, effortless clarity. He was no longer a scientist wrestling with a problem. He was an artist, elegantly revealing a truth that he already knew, on a deep, fundamental level, was there. He has the theory, the team, and a new, powerful methodology. He is creating from a state of calm certainty. But the clock is still ticking. The dean is still watching. Can this new, elegant approach produce a concrete, undeniable result before the final deadline? Part 6. The final month before the presentation was a period of intense, focused, and surprisingly joyful work. This was the final and most important test, to maintain this new, calm, and logical faith in the face of a hard, unyielding deadline. The dark night came a week before the presentation. They ran the new algorithm on the full dataset, a process that took 3 days. When the results came back, they were not a clear, elegant pattern. They were a new, more complex, and even more chaotic form of noise. The disappointment was a physical blow. Isla, his student, was crestfallen. The old Alistair would have seen this as a catastrophic failure, proof that his new method was a delusion. This was the ultimate test of his new mindset. He felt the familiar, cold knot of panic in his stomach. But he did not let it take over. He took a break from the lab. He drove out to the coast, walked along the windy cliffs, and he did not think about the problem. He simply performed his protocol. He set the axiom, the solution is elegant and obvious. He then asked the question, if the solution is obvious, what am I not seeing? He returned to the lab that evening, and he looked at the new, complex data with fresh eyes. And then he saw it. The chaos was not random. It was a fractal. It was the same complex resonance pattern, repeating itself on different scales, from the micro to the macro. The reason it looked like chaos was because they were looking at it from too close. He consolidated his growth by trusting the process completely. He programmed the computer to zoom out, to change the scale of the visualization. And as it did, the chaotic, fractal noise resolved, with a breathtaking, beautiful clarity, into a single, vast, and elegant geometric form. It was a complex, multi-layered torus, a self-referencing, self-sustaining loop of pure, harmonic energy. And at its very heart, humming with a quiet, powerful light, was the precise frequency he had been hearing in his dreams. It was the neural signature of consciousness. And it was beautiful. He has it. The proof. A discovery that will change the world. He has navigated his final test of faith not with more effort, but with a deeper trust in his logical, intuitive process. Now, he must present this impossible, beautiful truth to the world that is not yet ready for it. Part 7. The 2 days leading up to the presentation were a period of calm, focused preparation. The loop of his discovery was closed. The final loop, the one that would reveal his work to the world, began. Alistair and his team did not work frantically to build a complex, data-heavy presentation. They did the opposite. They created a presentation that was as elegant and minimalist as the discovery itself. It was a story, a logical and beautiful unfolding of their journey from noise to signal. The centerpiece was the final visualization, the pulsating, geometric torus, the living, breathing image of consciousness itself. Alistair prepared for the presentation not by rehearsing his speech, but by doing his work. He sat in the quiet of his office, and he set his final, most powerful axiom. The presentation is a perfect, clear, and successful transmission of the truth. Its importance is immediately and universally understood. He was not hoping for this outcome. He was simply inhabiting the timeline where it was already a fact. He was not going into the presentation to convince anyone. He was going in to report on a discovery that had already been made. The morning of the presentation, he received a short, simple email from Evelyn Reed. He had sent her his findings the night before. Her reply was a single, cryptic line. The boat has reached the shore. Welcome to the new world. The stage is set. The discovery is ready. The creator is in a state of calm, unshakable certainty. He is about to present a new map of reality to the old guardians of the map. Will they be able to see it? Part 8. The boardroom was a cold, sterile, and intimidating space. Dean Wallace and the 10 members of the funding committee sat at a long, dark table, their faces a mixture of skepticism and impatience. Alistair's career was on the line. He stood at the podium. He took a slow, calm breath. And he began. He did not start with an apology or a defense. He started with a single, powerful statement. For 2 years, I have been searching for a signal in the noise. I can now report that my foundational premise was wrong. The signal is the noise. He took them on a journey. He told them the story of his failure, of the analytical traps, of the decision to look at the data differently. He was not just a scientist presenting data. He was a teacher, gently and logically guiding them through a paradigm shift. He was not asking them to believe in anything mystical. He was showing them the rigorous, repeatable, and purely logical steps that had led him to his conclusion. And then, he showed them the image. The living, breathing, toroidal field of consciousness. He did not tell them what it was. He simply let it fill the massive screen behind him, its complex harmonic beauty humming silently in the room. The boardroom was completely silent. He could feel their analytical minds trying to deconstruct it, to find the flaw. Dean Wallace was the first to speak, his voice sharp and dismissive. "Dr. Finch," he said with a condescending smirk, "this is a very pretty picture. But it is not science. It is a computer-generated fantasy. Where is your proof?" This was the moment. The final challenge from the heart of the old paradigm. The old Alistair would have launched into a complex, data-heavy defense. His nervous system would have been flooded with fear. The new Alistair simply smiled, a calm, quiet, and deeply confident smile. "The proof, Dean Wallace," he replied, his voice even and clear, "is that the pattern is predictive." He then clicked to his final slide. It showed the real-time brainwave data of a test subject in his lab. The data was a chaotic storm. "This is the noise from a subject in a non-coherent state," he explained. He then typed a command into his laptop. A specific, low-frequency, audible hum, the very frequency from his dreams, began to play softly in the boardroom. On the screen, the chaotic data from the test subject's brain began to shift. It began to organize itself. And after 30 seconds, with a breathtaking and undeniable grace, it resolved into the very same, perfect, toroidal pattern. The room was in a state of stunned, absolute silence. He had not just shown them a picture. He had shown them the creative principle in action. He had used a specific frequency to turn chaos into coherence, right before their eyes. The promise of the introduction was fulfilled. He had found a logical, repeatable, and evidence-based path to consciously influencing reality. The discovery is proven. The skeptic has become the master. The world of science is about to be turned on its head. But what is the true, lasting impact of a discovery that proves that consciousness is not just an observer, but an active, creative force in the universe? Part 9. The presentation did not just save Alistair's lab, it created a new world. The Finch Institute for Consciousness Studies, fully funded by a consortium that was formed in the days following his presentation, became the global epicenter for a new, integrated science, a science that honored both the data and the observer. Alistair's life was transformed. He was no longer just a scientist, he was a philosopher, a teacher, a pioneer. His work was no longer a struggle, but a joyful exploration. He had found the ultimate flow state, a state of being where his logical mind and his intuitive, creative self worked in perfect, harmonious collaboration. He had learned that feeling it was not a prerequisite for manifestation. For him, the feeling of correctness, of logical elegance, was the emotional signature of his own alignment. He had learned the ultimate secret of the logical path. The universe is not an emotional, whimsical being that needs to be pleased or persuaded. It is a vast, intelligent, and perfectly logical system. It responds to the clear, focused, and unwavering command of a conscious observer who has decided what is true. The method of axiomatic creation was not a way of tricking the universe. It was a way of finally, and for the first time, communicating with it in its own native language, the language of pure, creative, and powerful logic. We see Alistair a year later. He is not in his lab. He is in the Scottish Highlands, sitting in the garden with Evelyn Reed. They are not talking about science. They are playing a duet on the piano, the music a beautiful, intricate, and perfectly resolved
conversation between two brilliant minds. Between them on the piano is a simple, perfectly balanced cairn of 5 stones. He learned that the most powerful feelings are not joy or gratitude, but the que profound satisfaction of a logical proof made manifest. What is the one, simple, unproven action about your own success that you are willing to accept as true, just for today? You do not need to feel your manifestation into existence. You can think it into existence. Your logical mind is not your enemy, it is your most powerful, untapped creative tool. Your challenge is this: show us one problem or desire in your life. For 1 week, for just 5 minutes a day, you are forbidden from trying to find the solution. Instead, you will treat it as a logical proof. You will write down the solution as an action, exempli gratia, the perfect job is secured. Then, you will ask one logical question. Assuming this is a fact, what are the 3 most logical things that must have happened for it to be true? This is not visualization. This is reverse engineering your own success. What did your logical mind reveal to you? Share your proof in the comments below. For more stories that provide a logical, no-nonsense, and powerful path to conscious creation, make sure you subscribe and join this community of rational mystics.